Donald Trump is not a believer in climate change, and he has taken actions to prove that, including pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord. Now, recently, he wanted to use an example of weather to make a statement about climate because he's an idiot and doesn't know the difference between those two things. In a tweet, he said the following: "In the East, it could be the coldest New Year's Eve on record. Perhaps we could use a little bit of that good old global warming that our country, but not other countries, was going to pay trillions of dollars to protect against. Bundle up." So, you guys just.
So you guys. All right, so of course weather, they had to explain to him, NASA had to literally send this quote in. Weather is what conditions of atmosphere are over a short period of time, and climate is how the atmosphere behaves over relatively long periods of time. You already lost him, that's longer than a tweet. And even if he read that, he'd be like, yeah, I got it, so it's cold outside. I don't get it, right? Because he's not very bright. So some facts, the 8 warmest years ever have all come since 1998. So this past October was the second warmest October on record. First 10 months of 2017 were, according to NASA, the second warmest 10 months ever, second only to the year before, 2016. And it goes on and on and on. 97% of the climate scientists in the world agree that the climate change is real and man-made. Look, but we're having conversations with a guy incapable of understanding the words we're using. Although he says he has the best words. But he thinks that climate change is a Chinese hoax. How do you have a conversation with a guy who's on a different planet? Like, what do you say? No, China didn't gather 97% of the world's scientists, the Norwegians, the ones from Botswana, and the other guy from Peru. They didn't all get them in one room in Shanghai and be like, all right, do you all agree to do this hoax so we can trick Donald Trump, right? I mean, how do you, it's like going into an insane asylum and trying to reason with people.
Yeah.
And he's not mentally capable of understanding the difference between weather and climate.
Well, it's another one that if it wasn't real, it would be funny, right? Because on New Year's Eve in New York, somebody would be out there watching the ball drop and they're freezing, and jokingly they'd be like, man, we need some of that global warming. And like it would be a joke and you'd laugh, but that's not the president of the United States saying it like it's real. That's the scary part, that he actually says this. And like you said, Cenk, no one can explain to him like, well, if the temperature of the planet increases, 2 degrees, then the Arctic ice melts and the oceans rise and we have more hurricanes. And like no one, and I'm sure down at NASA they have a conversation and they're like, it's your turn. It's your turn to talk to him. Like, no, I talked to him last week. Well, it's your, no, I talked to him.
There's like no way that Trump has ever had a conversation with a NASA scientist.
Yeah, there is some lowly intern who has to, it's like, all right, you got to make the call. You have to, yeah, they're so smart. They have to find someone in between because they're like, I can't speak as dumb as he understands. Yeah. I'm too smart to make this dumb enough for him. So we need somebody in the middle who can translate smart to dumb. Like it's 2 different languages.
Yeah, look, the scary part about all of this is when you look at the issue of climate change, the impact of climate change that we're already experiencing in the context of all the other policies that he's pushing for and has succeeded in. So what did Trump have in terms of a legislative win? Tax cuts for the wealthy. And what have we been experiencing more and more of every year? Extreme weather conditions, right? Weather conditions that have been exacerbated by climate change. So increased severity of hurricanes, increased severity of wildfires. These are all issues that have required federal funding in order to provide disaster relief. And scientists are saying every year it's gonna get worse, and we're about to experience a significant cut in funding just so millionaires and billionaires can continue living high off the hog. So that really makes me worry because there will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. We're gonna experience them in the worst ways. And I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's gonna be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader. And by the way, Trump's statements reminded me of a video that we showed you guys back in 2015 of Senator Inhofe, who at the time was the chairman of the Environment and Public Works Committee. Here's what he had to say to make a statement about whether or not climate change exists.
We keep hearing that 2014 has been the warmest year on record. I asked the chair, you know what this is? It's a snowball. And that's just from outside here. So it's very, very cold out, very unseasonal. So here, Mr. President, catch this.
Well, that explains it all, because the fact that there's snow in Washington, D.C. in January or February means that global warming doesn't exist. I don't know what's wrong with you two. There was obvious evidence right there, and yet you're still hanging on to this global warming myth. Let me tell you something. If there was global warming, if global warming really worked like that, like suddenly it's 80 degrees everywhere, you know how many of us would be moving to Canada tomorrow? We'd be like, all right, it's warm, let's get out of here.
Yeah, and there's about a snowball's chance in hell of them understanding the difference between weather and climate. So last note on that. Look, on any particularly hot day, we could then say, okay, global warming is real. Oh, it got cold again in the winter, I guess it's not real. No, of course you don't do it day by day. You look at the macro picture. You look at the overall picture. Was it hot or cold on one day, but was it hot for the entirety of the year? What is the trend? And do you know what the 3 hottest years on record are for the last 140 years? 2016, 2015, 2017. So the last 3 years were 3 hottest years ever in history, in our recorded history, okay? So that's a trend, that's climate, as opposed to it snowed on one day. I mean, these morons, then you just move up to the North Pole and they're like, problem solved.
Well, that's why words like scientific evidence have made the list of 7 dirty words that we're not supposed to be using anymore.
Yeah. Yep.
Isn't that amazing? Alonzo, I never thought about it that way, but George Carlin had those 7 dirty words and stuff, and they were banned because they were dirty.
Right.
Now, science is dirty.
It's a dirty word.
And they literally banned the word science-based and evidence-based from some departments in the government.
That's right.
We went from like body parts to science being considered dirty. If you become a member of the Young Turks, you'll be saying,
I'm like a smart person.
So do it right now, tytnetwork.com/join. Get the whole Young Turks show every day.